You also run the Franklin Bitcoin ETF. I couldn't do a show without mentioning Bitcoin, folks. You know that. The symbol, those of you who want to know, is EZBC. Franklin was one of 10, actually, it was 10 companies that floated a spot Bitcoin ETF. 9 of them were new. Grayscale was already existing. Tell us a little bit how that's tracking Bitcoin, and we can chat for a moment on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, Bob, to your credit, to ask about international ETFs when Bitcoin is truly, sucked the oxygen out of the room, it was nice to start that way. Yeah, I mean, the last 2 to 3 months, in terms of all the issuers building out the plumbing and the infrastructure to make sure that these spot Bitcoin ETFs did what they were supposed to do. And here we are, and so we're only maybe a week or two into their performance live in the market, but the $1 million question was, investors who like ETFs expect the ETF to track its underlying asset, and in this case, the funds own Bitcoins, and the performance of the funds has been tracking the price of Bitcoin. Across the 10, they're going to have different benchmarks, so maybe the performance will be a little different between the two, but generally, they're all doing exactly what they were supposed to do in terms of tracking spot Bitcoin.
And Mike, one thing people were wondering about, Bitcoin trades 24/7, but the ETFs don't. That doesn't seem to have been a major problem. I'm wondering if you think so. And it looks like the 9 that are new got about $4 billion in inflows. That seems respectable to me. It's hard because I don't have any benchmarks to compare, but that seems fairly respectable number here. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, a couple thoughts. One, on the structure side of things, there's no question that the ETF is a superior structure for somebody who wants to buy and hold Bitcoin as an investment, just like GLD is a superior structure to hold gold versus putting it in your safe at home if it's a investment vehicle. If you're holding it as a speculative investment to gain access to the asset class. So that the ETF is doing it. You got a bunch of smart people in a room creating an arbitrage. It's going to work. We could create an ETF of almost anything. I sure hope we don't, but you could. As far as the flows into the product, I think it's very respectable. The one question I have is, where's there more demand? Is there more demand to get into these new ETFs? Or is there more demand to get out of GBTC, which is the elephant in the room, right? It's been locked up Bitcoin for a very, very long time at depressed values at a discount. And now it's finally trading at par with the spot price of Bitcoin. And so far you've had 4 billion come into the new 9 ETFs, but you've had almost 2 billion come out of GBTC. So net, it's more money coming into Bitcoin right now. But how does that play out over the long term? I don't know, but it's something to keep an eye on.
But Dave or Mike, it's true. There's 2 billion came out, but it was a $26 billion fund at Grayscale, and they're charging 1.5%. Mike, Dave, you're charging 0.19. Is that right? Right now, 0.19%.
19 bips, way to zero.
That's a big difference. 1.5% versus 0.19% is a big difference, and yet, to me, Mike, it's remarkable how sticky this money is. You'd think that's not 9 basis points or 3 basis points. That's a lot. And yet, they seem to be relying on the idea that the money's going to be fairly sticky. And so far, I think they're right.
There's going to be multiple types of money. Right now, GBTC is a liquidity machine, right? So if you are a big institution looking for exposure to Bitcoin, for now, you have the same story that SPY's had for years, right? SPY tracking the S&P 500 versus the cheaper Vanguard or iShares version. Liquidity matters when you're trading at scale and trading in speed.
The question is, though, the difference is that's 6 basis points when you're talking about SPY and the S&P 500. This is like 120 basis points. This is
absolutely
huge. More than 120 basis points.
And I think that's the question: is how much of the money in GBTC is early money that the tax hit in a taxable account, where the tax hit would be a serious hindrance, versus how much of it is, I know a lot of folks that own GBTC in their qualified accounts, right? Yeah. They're all going to trade out of it. Why would they possibly pay that 1.5% when they can pay 20 basis points to Franklin or one of the other issuers? That's just a no-brainer. I don't think anybody has a clue what that makeup of that $26 billion is. And we're all going to find out, I think, over the next 6 months to a year.
Yeah. So where does Bitcoin and the ETFs go from here? We had SIBO on last week. They were all excited about options potentially coming up. They have the application in at the SEC. Hasn't been approved, but you guess where this is going to go. So I'm curious to see anybody who's going to work their Bitcoin ETFs into target retirement and asset allocation funds. Mike, you brought this up when I asked you about where it's going. Is that ever going to happen?
I think it will happen. It'll be a differentiator for a lot of folks to say that we offer that. My personal views aside, it's definitely an easy vehicle to do it in. Model portfolios is the future. Firms such as, there's a lot of big issuers out there that have very large models, so they can feed these accounts. Small allocation goes a long ways in terms of asset growth. I do think you'll see it. Whether that's good thing, well, that remains to be seen. But I do definitely think that the model game, a lot of model providers, whether it's the issuers or strategists, will start adding, and they'll use it as a differentiator to the competition, and we'll see how it plays out.
Dave, I want to meet the people who first go ahead and do that and put it in their model portfolios. Gary Gensler of the SEC made it very clear that there are suitability issues here that are very real. And reg best interests. So would you not agree that's a little bit of a barrier to have this Bitcoin ETF suddenly appear in model portfolios?
Well, that's the, we're all watching these flows, week in, and a lot of the conversations with either asset allocators, models, a lot of the platforms is a lot more, hey, let's wait and see. Let's see how these things are doing. Your question earlier on tracking, we're getting a lot of those types of questions as well. And so there's a lot of research going on to say, hey, what if we added 1%, 2%, or 3% Bitcoin ETF exposure to some asset allocation model? How does that impact the volatility, the Sharpe ratio? Those are, all that math is going on right now. And, the early feedback is, I think there could be a place for adding this ETF into an investor's portfolio.
Okay. Well, there you go. You heard two different kind of opinions there. I think it's going to be a while, folks, before that happens. But we'll see. What an interesting conversation. Two very smart people, as always, here on ETF Edge.